Awesome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for me, it is currently 4:05 p.m. and we're getting started a little bit later than what we were planning to. And apparently there was a big time difference, circumstance, miscommunication, but we got it all figured out. And therefore episode 27 is rolling in strong. Now this weekend, I got to say, speaking for the metal scene, we got a new album from I Prevail. We got a new album from, what is it? We got To Obey a Tyrant. We got Orthodox, which we just interviewed Adam Easterling on August 5th and then published that episode, which is the prior episode, covering Learning to Dissolve. And then on top of that, well, we have Spite releasing their newest album, Dedication to Flesh. You guys get it. It's a very, very big weekend for metal, very big weekend for heavy counterculture. And so we jump over to the UK, which is so cool to say. No matter how many times we go to Germany or talk with bands from Indonesia, Malaysia, you name it, we are here for it. We are here for the opportunities to reach around the world and tell the stories of bands who, well, many of the people here in the US might not even know of, despite the association genretically that To Obey a Tyrant might have with Lorna Shore or Warm Shepherd or Shrine, just with their blackened deathcore vibe mixed with a couple details that makes To Obey a Tyrant what they are. But today, or technically for them, later tonight, I am being joined by Josh, Brandon, and Bruno. And these guys, 3 out of 5 of To Obey a Tyrant, which I think is a pretty good fucking package deal. And you guys understand how we do the podcast. We have the first half for the people. We are learning about their background as people, how they became musicians, any passions on the side that they might have had, and essentially the road that was paved to get to where they are now, being a part of this band, and now releasing yet another banger of an album, which I have yet to even listen to in its entirety. So it should be really cool to talk about the album later in session, digging under it lyrically, track by track, and that will be edited into a separate session for the Under the Skin series. But gentlemen, getting started off, how are you all doing tonight?
Pretty good, man. Yeah, decent.
I'm not bad.
Good.
Tired. Hungry?
Yeah.
Naturally.
Talk about hungry. My dinner might come during the interview. So
Hey, there you go, man. There you go. So getting started off immediately. Basically, all I want to know, if you've had the opportunity to check out any of the prior episodes, which, this was kind of something improvised and put together in about a week's time. And we've been talking back and forth, so I would get it if you guys did not have the time to attend to that, with you guys releasing your newest album. But basically what I want each and every one of you to do is go ahead and introduce yourself, your role in the band, and basically start from the beginning and tell us everything that the world should know collectively about who you guys are as people behind the scenes of To Obey a Tyrant. Anybody may take the reins and begin.
Brandon, he's the pretty face of the band, so
there you go.
Hey, I'm Brandon. I do vocals for To Obey a Tyrant. Really leading up to the band, me and Josh really were writing music with a few other projects before, sort of trying to make things work with different members and trying to find ourselves in the metal scene, jumping between sort of different genres, always deathcore mainly, but sort of different sides of deathcore. And it wasn't until probably 2019 or 20 where we decided that we wanted to go more blackened. So yeah, that's really our journey from the start, when me and Josh started jamming out at first. We've been jamming since 2016 probably. Is that when we first began?
14.
Yeah, a long time.
Fucking
it
time.
goes back to about 2012 maybe, for me and Brandon personally.
Oh shit, there you go.
Right.
And near the beginning, so you're saying that with the beginning of To Obey a Tyrant, that was evidently the more Blackened inspired music that you were looking to write. So did you have, and you said you were bouncing around with like the member lineup with other projects beforehand. So were you rocking like more just classic slamming stuff and deathcore? Like what was the
More
idea
like
for the original projects?
more like the sort of Aliencore stuff, like old school versions, Crown sort of vibe.
Sweet.
We were doing a lot of that stuff towards the start. Like even towards the start of To Air Tyrant, we were doing that sort of stuff.
Right.
It's very more techy, a little bit.
Yeah,
more
techy.
back in the day.
Right. And naturally, Brandon, like basically digging even more into your background, I guess, like near the beginning, were you into like what got you really into doing vocals? Like, because obviously you're the vocal guy. And me personally, I don't know that much about To Obey a Tyrant's background because I didn't do my homework, evidently. So near the very beginning of your musical background and just being a music enthusiast, wanting to be the voice for a project, back in the day, did you like play guitar or do anything like that? Play drums?
At school, I really wanted to play drums, and I couldn't get a drum kit because it was too loud, and like my mum wouldn't let me play the drums. We didn't have the room for a drum kit, stuff like that. Then during school, I started getting into deathcore and like death metal bands like Job for a Cowboy, and then obviously that's Suicide Silence. And then I stumbled upon Chelsea Grin when they first released their first self-titled, and I started listening to that, and for some reason it was listening to that made me want to do vocals generally. And then after that I used to start trying to cover like their songs on their first album, or was it EP, like Shaney Stokes, like Krugerbanger and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I started falling upon other bands like Oceano, and stuff like that, really.
Yeah, no, that's sick. And all legendary bands, one of them that seems to be a regular band. And obviously, Job for a Cowboy is more or less a starter kit for anybody who's authentically trying to get into the deathcore scene, whether as an instrumentalist, a graphic art designer, a vocalist, or maybe even management. Like I hear the name Job for a Cowboy thrown around so much, and it is quite evident their impact on the scene. And more over time, it becomes apparent to me that despite them being from a city that I did not grow up in, but the state that I grew up in, being Arizona, them coming from Glendale, which again, shout out to my buddy Chris, who is out in Glendale still as we speak, because I would just never touched on their discography. And it's becoming more apparent to me that I do. But no, that's badass. The fact that you were diving into bands, the starter kit really for all deathcore enthusiasts being Job for a Cowboy, Suicide Silence, Oceano, Chelsea Grin. And I absolutely understand that after hearing the debut EP and release from Chelsea Grin, that being Alex Kohler, I mean, I think a lot of people ended up getting into vocals after albums such as the debut from Chelsea Grin, The Cleansing from Suicide Silence, really any of those records that are still raved about today, just untouched, unrivaled for the culture. And that's really what's important. So while we're naming off bands and records, I kind of want to pluck your brain and see if I can get 5 albums off of you that you would say kind of helped you forge and really just want to dig into and just crack open the skull of the musical genre that you have now invested yourself into with To Obey a Tyrant.
Right. I can't think. 5. It's just so many to choose from. Like,
yeah, no, seriously.
Massive influences for me, I guess. Aversion's Crown would have definitely been one of them. The album Tyrant.
Okay.
That's me because I said we did alien stuff at first, so that was like the start influence for me for doing vocals. I wanted to have that sort of vibe with my vocals, like Aversion's Crown, like the lows and screams like that. So yeah, I guess Aversion's Crown are definitely one of the major ones for me for my sound, and Chelsea Grin. That's like early era for me.
Yeah.
Going forward, for vocals, I would probably say Shrine of Malice would definitely one for me.
Absolutely, that's awesome.
Obviously, I'm just going to be that guy and say Lorna Shore, obviously, because they're so like on it in the scene right now. You know, everyone loves Lorna. Yeah,
they're leading it, man. They are the head. They are the head figure, the figurehead on the vessel that is Blackened Deathcore right now, and it's no one can doubt that. Really, it's okay.
Yeah, and probably a band called Acranius, if you know them.
Acranius, indeed, I do.
Yeah, I'm really into them at the moment. So.
Hell yeah. Aren't they another one of those Titans from the UK? Like
Germany, I think.
That's Luke Griffin's other band. Or
right.
band.
Acrania, right. Yeah. Which they haven't released in years. And I'm like, when are we getting more? But, you know, that's besides the point. So reviewing upon, I think you've provided us four or five bands now. So yeah, that's
for me personally. That's me personally.
Right, of course. And I think wrapping it up on that little bit, Brandon, I guess what would be something you would suggest to new and upcoming vocalists? Because you annihilated the intro, or what will be the intro for this episode. So what is like kind of an instinctual tip that you could offer new and upcoming vocalists trying to get into the craft?
Make sure you have somewhere where you can consistently practice, really, because practice with everything is just absolutely key. Just keep going with it. Even if you sound terrible at the start, it's okay. It will get better. Right. I sounded absolutely awful at the start, and sometimes I sound awful now, but it just doesn't. It's not. You're not going to be good at it straight away. Do you know what I mean? And that's why it's good to have somewhere where you can just do it, and just flow with it by yourself, because other people might be like, oh, you sound like rubbish or whatever,
whatever,
but whatever, doesn't matter what people say. I've had, we used to practice at our old friend's house, and I had his girlfriend's dad tell me not to quit my day job and your shit and all this, and it's just, you just got to keep going with it. Find a sound that suits you. You know, vocal tutorials do help. And just be passionate about it, and you will get it, and you will find your sound.
Right, exactly. And I think that's a pretty good way to wrap up Brandon Singleton's contributions to what will be the people half of the podcast. Josh, you go ahead and go up next, friend. Tell us a bit about yourself, the role that you play in the band, and everything relevant. You don't even have to compact it either. Give us as much lore for To Obey a Tyrant as you can think of, and just kind of tell your story. Talk about how you got into what you're doing musically at the very beginning, and how you ended up just kind of winding your way down the road and placing yourself into Obey a Tyrant.
Well, if people don't know, I'm the guitarist. Like Brandon said, I started it with him from a previous project, and that didn't work out. But no, me and Brandon's been best mates literally since 3 months old, I think. So it's been a long old thing. But I started off the musical one because because my oldest brother is the reason why I play guitar. Him playing guitar himself and having music playing like the Misfits and Nirvana and Poison the Well and stuff like that in the house when I was growing up definitely influenced it. But right at the start, I couldn't stand screaming. Deathcore, death metal, I couldn't stand a lot. I was and literally still am, but a bold version of my emo self back in school. So I live for the sing-alongs and the soppy emotion crap.
Well,
so
I mean, one thing I do want to say, and this is it has a rhetorical nature to it. Aren't we all just kind of more edged, more beaten, kind of more just bristled and and just, I don't even know, grimy versions of our emo selves. Like, dude,
Apart from
basically,
Bruno.
like
Bruno was
absolutely.
like one of them caveman slam.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all about the beard, man. You got to rock the caveman slam vibe. And that's just
man.
how it's been forever for me now. But you were saying, Mr. Rushton.
Yeah. So I started off just playing real crappy wannabe punk stuff. What if I listen back now and try play now, it's more like Nickelback or Creed or something like that. No punk at all. But then I moved into sort of metalcore, like Poison the Well and sort of early Killswitch Engage type stuff.
Right.
Until Brandon started deciding he wanted to do vocals, and then he would bring along what eventually made me into liking the deathcore stuff. I think the first deathcore band I actually got into was Bring Me, when there was actually deathcore.
Right.
So I think the first song he showed me was Play for Plague. So
yeah. Oh my God. Such an iconic track. Holy shit.
yeah. So, but ever since then, it's just got heavier and heavier. I don't hardly listen to metal anymore, like not death metal, unless I need to write. I just go back to my emo stuff.
Well, I mean, like, very similar to what me and a guest on a previous episode discussed. It's like when you're on the clock and you're having to write all this deathcore, this death metal, this blackened deathcore, this blackened death metal, like anything you can imagine, any tiny niche subgenre. Once you're off the clock, man, I'm sure over time anybody's just like, I'd rather listen to Shakira. And then your bandmates are like, what the fuck? And you're like, hey, we're not working right now, dude. We're not cranking. It's time for Ariana Grande.
If we were working, I'll be busting out the old Celine Dion. I don't give a shit.
Exactly. There you go. And the thing is, speaking just as a musician, like you have to kind of pluck your creative out, like your creative influences from other genres. Otherwise, the music is just going to become stale. It's going to be like bread wrapped up in the cupboard, and then you forget about it. You know what I mean? And then, well, you bring it out and you're like, oh shit, it's growing its own environment now. It's self-preserving, but that's not what I'm here to eat. And then you toss it. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Like you gotta branch out and you gotta expand your creative horizons. And I mean, I can only imagine at the time when you were plugging into bands like Pray for Plagues or goddamn it, Bring Me the Horizon, having hometown heroes like that must have been really sick.
Yeah, it was weird because like before that, I think the other heaviest song I remember listening to was Escape the Fate, This War Is Ours. And I didn't even care for the screaming. I was more for the bloody chorus. And like my big thing growing up, when I used to write music, I used to love the big old melody lines in like choruses and stuff. So
right.
But for Tyrant, it's obviously evolved.
Yes.
So like when we released the demo of Voidwalker back in the early days, that was just me and Brandon. Sent that around to a few guys. I had a few people like trial out, didn't get much. But the guy that I will hands down like define the Tyrant sound for me was our old guitarist Aaron Moore. He's an older guy, so Daddy Moore, he bought the Slam to sure. I didn't like Slam at the start. I was more techie breakdowns and stuff.
Right.
So he bought that, and funny enough, he was one of the first people I heard say, let's just try the Slam and the deathcore. And we was like, no. Oh, well, I was like, no, I don't want Slam. No. Just brush that to the side. But then he was the same with me trying to bring black metal into our EP. So
right. No, yeah, and like especially as you get more fine-tuned with the subgenres and everything, it's like at first, of course, you're just kind of wanting to stick to one thing. That way you're not overcomplicating it. And that way when you get it out into the world, people are like, is this slam or is this Blackened Deathcore? You're like, I don't fucking know. I don't care, dude. Like, here's the music. Like, enjoy it or don't. You know what I mean? But that's funny to kind of hear that and just like, no slam. And then, you know, I'm sure it became a very crucial part of Tyrant.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now, he's not with us anymore, like in the band, but he's still, I still classify him as a member, just because he made the EP for me.
Right.
If he weren't in it, the EP wouldn't sound like the way it does, considering he only wrote 2 songs off the EP, but it's more of the influence he brought.
Right.
Me playing. But yeah,
it's sick. And if anything, so like, are you the rhythm guitarist or the lead guitarist? Are you the riffy boy or the chugs?
I used to just be the chuggo, but now in the album, thankfully, the only good thing about COVID was I got to write the album. It was meant to be like another 5-song EP, but I just got carried away and then sent Bruno a load of stuff. And then Bruno surprised us with him actually being able to play guitar and being a better guitarist than me and James put together. So, but yeah, now Aaron's gone. I've just gone into playing some lead lines and whatnot.
Yeah,
kind
sick.
of taken back from my old emo days of wanting melody lines back in it, but giving it a creepy little edge.
Yeah, which like collectively, just speaking for music and counterculture music, I think it's always good. And this is a quote by Jonathan Davis of Korn, which pretty influential band for the scene collectively, even if it's not specifically the deathcore scene or the Blackened Deathcore scene. But like, he always emphasizes on balance, right? And he always emphasizes on, you can have your and shit, but then you always have a melody to kind of smoothen things out. And I think that's a very, very important thing to remember for any genre of music, because if you have the same thing throughout the whole song, it's just like it becomes stale. Again, it's that same phrase about the music becoming stale. So good thing, damn good thing that there is a little bit of emo in there somewhere, because like that's just what makes music rememberable. And it's like, oh, this band is not afraid, or not like, you know, fuck emo and fuck death metal and fuck, like, you know, it just becomes, at least for people like me who just continue to want to talk to so many different bands and so many different subgenres, it's like it almost becomes irritating when you're just hearing, oh, fuck cleans and deathcore and all that other stuff, or, you know, just the more bolder sides of deathcore and the culture that is evolving and developing as time progresses. But so Mr. Josh, I wanted to go ahead and grab your top 5s, basically any album, any EP, any single, or just bands, if you can't isolate a specific album or EP, because I know I tortured Brandon with that. If you don't want to do that, just go ahead and give us 5 different artists that are huge, small, whatever, that you would recommend, or that kind of helped fortify what To Obey a Tyrant is, and more specifically, how this new album has like come together musically, just inspiration wise.
Well, my top favorite album ever, it's a complete different genre, but it's Famous Monsters by the Misfits.
Okay.
That is just my liquid gold. Like I always go back to it. For the Tyrant sound, obviously Lorna Shore, Mortal, that's just flawless in my opinion.
Right.
And I wasn't even a fan of Lorna Shore before that, but hearing that I couldn't say a bad word about it. So and then obviously I've seen a few comments from previous videos like Vermilion Moon, Behemoth. All I do is rip off Behemoth basically. Like just I just rip them off. Like they're flawless in my eyes. Like the Satanist, and I Loved You at Your Darkest. Them 2 albums for me gave me quite a lot of inspiration for Omni, for sure.
Absolutely. There you go.
And just can't think of anything.
Maybe a guilty pleasure artist or band, if you kind of
I
think that.
love country music.
Country, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We always joke like I need to just get a banjo and acoustic and just start my own little country project.
That's great. That's great.
I don't know. Country for me is literally the acoustic and redneck version of an emo. So it suits me to a point.
I agree.
They're all depressed, so it's amazing.
Some to kind of string out, all that type of shit. So like, obviously, being that you guys are from the UK and I'm over here in the States, when you say country, do you mean our country or like?
No okay. No other country can do country. It's the States. Like I'm just I think I was an American redneck back in my previous life or something. I just everything about it just gets me. Never been. That's the thing. I've never hardly stepped foot out of the UK, but just something about America and that country music gets me going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of foreign appeal in there too. Somewhere you're just like, damn, what would it be like to be an American? And then you're like, oh yeah, country, and you just listen to that. You're like, I'll stay here. Like, no,
it's the opposite. Get me out.
Really?
Yeah, ship me over to America. It'll be amazing. Love it.
Shit.
I'll just record from over there. I'll stay in the band, but I'll just be in America.
I never thought I'd heard that. That's funny to hear. I mean, like, just speaking on behalf of that, like, we got so much just embarrassing shit going on over here all the time. So like over here, at least everybody I know, we're like, you know what? Let's go to the UK. Let's go to Germany. Let's go to Norway. Let's go to anywhere but here. And like, I don't know if it's just because of what's going on right now with all of our laws and regulations, but it's just such a shit show. I'm like, dude, I want to go up where it never gets to 105 degrees or even 95 degrees during the summer. Like, I'm done with it, man. I just want to be in the freezing cold, and I want to be around a whole bunch of people who are so incredibly pale, just like me, and like they just enjoy.
Isn't that just Alaska or something?
Alaska, yeah. Well, I mean, Alaska, the thing is, there are entire islands worth of meth heads hiding in the darkness like vampires. And if it
sounds like heaven.
Joking.
It's
heaven if you have an AR-15, man. Like my buddy, he lives up there, man. And oh my God, he just describes to me just actually a coven of vampires hanging out on a specific island. And if you trip over there, it's just literally as a horde of zombies, just like, and like
it sounds like a place called Boscombe down in Bournemouth where we're it's where all the drug and the rehabs are.
Oh, Jesus, man.
Bloody hell.
Well, I mean, yeah, definitely we'll be asking you guys a little bit about the UK and like your pros and cons with it here closer to the end of the people segment. But we got 5 records, I think, from you, Josh, right?
I think it was 4, but I can't think. Just anything the Ramones does.
The Ramones. Right. We were saying country. That's right. I forgot about that. You're like, okay, country. That's number 5.
Yeah, that throws everyone off. British boy listening to American country. You can call me Danny Warsnop soon.
Do you have a specific country artist, like maybe Chris Stapleton or George Strait, Johnny Cash? Like,
yeah, George Strait was one of my big ones, but he's a bit too happy. Like the main guy for me is Aaron Lewis. He used to be in that crappy band called Stained.
Okay.
But he's gone country. He's gone back to his roots, is what he calls it, I think.
Right.
But he just sings just pure truth.
Right.
How miserable everything actually is, but
right. And I'm sure you lads are familiar with the band Asking Alexandria, because I mean, who the fuck isn't? But yeah. Did you know that he has a countryside project where he has like really uppity Danny Warstop specifically? He has like really uppity, almost poppy Southern country.
Yeah, I've heard it, man.
Yeah. Like it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Like me trying to next band practice, I'll just come waltzing in like a bloody cowboy boots and a big old cowboy hat. some straw. My guys were
Actually,
Yeah.
it would be a Tyrant next set. Josh
be a
will show up in
cowboy.
some boots. bro.
Me starting it off. Just acoustic done.
They call me Rushton, he says.
Redneck Rushton.
Redneck Rushton. That's fucking sick. But
Yeah.
as we kind of crawl closer to what will be the end of the people part of the podcast, us being joined by Brandon Singleton, the vocalist Josh Hushton, which is like actually such a cool name. You guys all have such cool names. The guitarist, and now Bruno Clay, which honestly sounds like a fucking name for an agent. Just like they call me Bruno Clay. Fuck with me, you'll get your teeth kicked in, son, or something like that. I don't know. But
Yeah,
Like,
man.
as we
star name, isn't it?
Bruno Clay, he says. But, Bruno, go ahead and kind of get us introduced to the, in real life, not this agent that I'm thinking about in my head, but let's go ahead and get associated with the man behind the name, Bruno Clay. What do you do for the band? How did you get started with music? How did you end up picking up your instrument and just like saying, you know what, fuck it, I also want to become a part of a band? And then, the boys are like, hey, hello. And you're like, oh, okay. And just walk over there. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
go
man.
ahead and just tell us everything that you think the world should know. And tell us your story, man.
Yeah, man. So the main thing I do, I play drums in the band. It's my main thing, always been my main instrument. I do all our recording, mixing and mastering, and I write all our orchestrations as well. Obviously, like a lot of bands nowadays, since like lockdown, COVIDs and all that sort of stuff, everyone just sort of starts to learn to do all their own stuff. I've always been really into like mixing and mastering, really wanted to get into sound engineering anyway, so it's just a perfect opportunity to get involved in that. But way before then, my whole family's been like very much into music. I got 3 other older brothers, and my dad, they've all been super into music, musicians their whole lives. My dad's like really into always like a sort of cringy rock and roll and sort of blues stuff, but he's an amazing blues guitarist. And when I was, yeah, he can play, man. When I was younger, just because my parents had divorced, so every time we'd do like car trips every other weekend, I'd go out to my dad. And to be honest, like I think the earliest memory of sort of really getting into music was literally just taking those long car trips to my dad's place. He'd always be playing me like System of a Down or Queens of the Stone Age and stuff like that.
Sweet.
And I sort of my older brothers were, when they were younger, they're a lot more like sort of like delinquents pretty much. So they were like well into their like Slayer, Pantera, Slipknot, all that sort of stuff. And my first sort of main introduction to metal was those kind of like staple bands back in the day. Slayer, the massive one for me. Through them sort of to Slipknot a bit more, but generally sticking around that kind of thrashier sense. When I was a kid, I remember like just sort of siphoning through my oldest brother Otis, all his like old CDs back in the day, and he just had like all the best shit, man. Job for a Cowboy, fucking Slayer, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, from there, kind of, you start getting into the community a bit more, start getting to sort of know people a bit more, getting exposed to new sort of forms of music and stuff. And of course, I had my like cringy Grebo kind of phase, like everyone, asking Alessandro, Bringing the Horizon, all that sort of shit.
Hell yeah.
But from there, I had like a few mates at the time when I was in school. We sort of all kind of like the same sort of stuff, and just used to jam, just piss around, and got really into like sort of the old school death metal sort of scene, and really into that sort of stuff. And it was just crap, really, mostly covers, like as it always is. But no, that was my first sort of main introduction to getting into playing drums. My one of my brothers is a drummer. He's always drummed, and I just thought I was so sick. Like all of my brothers play guitar and stuff, but drums was like the one, like what Brandon was saying, like not everyone has the opportunity to, like have a kit. It's loud, it's expensive as fuck. Like
Yes.
it really was just like the best opportunity where, we lived in a detached house and I could like play, just fuck around, make as much noise as I want. It was sick. So and like just like anywhere, like there's never any drummers. They're like such an excess. So you know, like if you're a drummer and you're into metal and anything like that, people just snatch you up, you know, like you just play or start all these sessions with your mates and all that sort of stuff. So that was my main sort of introduction. It was literally just pissing around with my mates, starting shitty bands that, like, you know, you play a gig at like fucking youth clubs and shit like that. But you know, it was really fun at the time and really got me, most importantly, like passionate about it. But generally sticking around more like death metal at the time and all that sort of stuff. It was I'm not even too sure where my progression went. I think it was being more into bands like Asking Alexandria and like Bring Me the Horizon and bands like that, where I kind of started to find the more modern side and like deathcore and all that sort of shit.
Right.
It's like, you know, like it was mentioned, like Bring Me's first album, you know,
Yes.
Gateway, innit? It's Gateway.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, from there just kind of went on, kept going. I had a death metal band like when I was sort of like 16, and we played a show, I think when I was about 17. It was all right. It was the first band where we actually started doing our own like original stuff, all like old school death metal stuff, called Septicemia, super original. But we were playing a show in Bournemouth, and Josh and Brandon and Aaron and some of the other members, they were at that show. We had like the tiniest turnout, like no one came to see us, but you know, they saw us and they needed a drummer at the time. So they scouted me just walking home. Josh came up like fucking pitch black outside, like some crackhead, talking to like the 17-year-old.
It's not you.
Yeah. Like, hey kid, you want to join my band? But I did. I was pretty hesitant at first, to be honest. And then he was like pestering my girlfriend, like, yo, can you get this dude to like reply to his messages? But no, I did, and I'm super glad I did.
Now.
Yeah, mate, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. But that's why I do all the technical shit and I don't do all the socials, because yeah, you won't hear much from me. But,
Josh Harnett.
yeah. that's my main role. Drums, orchestrations, hermit, mate. That's my main role in the band. But yeah, that was my first sort of main introduction to the band, and sort of taking it to that.
There you go.
But that was my main introduction to sort of getting to that next step in getting more into deathcore scene and all that sort of stuff. Because at the time, I was still way into sort of like death metal and thrash and this more like classic old school sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of found it a bit weird. Like I was into it, but yeah, like the transitional period of like really getting into deathcore and all this modern sort of stuff took a while. But I'm really glad I did it, because yeah, you know, it kind of stems back to that childhood thing of like just fucking around, doing shit with your mates. Like it kind of still feels like that, you know.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah, and I'm like, especially when you're in a band that's been established for a little bit. And I remember when you guys released that first EP, it was like the gray, blue, and white color themed one. I think it had like the robed character on the front. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting logo. And like that's sometimes graphically, as a graphic art designer or someone who just loves typography and calligraphy and just the ultimate graphic art design of bands for bands. Sometimes that's the first impression, really, is just like kind of a scribbly logo that you can kind of read and you're like, oh, this band fucks already. You listen to them and you're like, oh, okay, this band fucks. And, you know, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I remember seeing you guys like getting started back in the day with that EP, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And back then I was talent scouting for what would be Signs of the Swarm and Shrine of Malice, which were kind of like my gateway deathcore bands. Before that, I'm like, what the fuck is Angel Maker? And like, how the hell? Because I thought at the beginning that it wasn't Mike and Casey. I thought it was just Mike or just Casey. And I'm like, there's no way that's just one guy, you know, just like all these different things I was cycling through. Like I had Suicide Silence, but I'm like, I need something heavier, and I need a band that's like actively just making moves in the scene. I didn't know about Lorna Shore. I didn't know about Make Them Suffer, not really. And I kind of thought of them as a progressive metalcore band. But nonetheless, just all these different bands that you end up getting into and checking out, it just kind of like paves the path to getting to where you need to be. But kind of like rewinding a little bit, I was super curious because you said brothers, older brothers that do guitar, that do drums. Dude, how many older brothers do you have, man?
Oh yeah, I've got 3 older brothers. It's always worked out pretty good for us. Like we all play guitar. Like one of them sings, one of them plays drums, and actually like it's like unlocking parts of my brain. Like even way before all of this shit, like when I was just like a child, we would just jam out like just as brothers, and like a couple of my brothers actually still do stuff. They got this band called the Clay Brothers, and they just do like sort of like heavy rock kind of stuff.
Right.
But like actually I think it kind of definitely stems from a lot of that sort of stuff for sure. But yeah, three older brothers, but we definitely all get it from my dad because he's like the OG. He used to do all sorts of like band stuff when he was younger, toured like Europe and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I can only imagine how much fun that must have been to actually be playing in bands, like imaginary bands or something, with your actual blood brothers and just like having a good time. And then you're like, okay, but can we make a band that will impress pops or something like that? Whatever the mindset was at the time. You're like, dad, wanted to attend to our set. He's like, son, that's going to be in the backyard. Yeah, I know. Shut up. Like, come see us. Come see us live. All that type of just the imagination in the household. Even just hearing that, I'm like, I want that for my kids someday, because I definitely plan to go with that gig later in life. And by all means and measures, man, like that sounds like such a dream come true, is just to have my kids just messing around on instruments and just being like, oh, we gotta show dad. They're like, rah, rah, rah. Like they're trying to copy my shit or whatever. I'm like, yeah. But I can only imagine how much fun that would have been. And like, I envy you for that in a very passive aggressive sense. But no, like kind of then modernizing and whoop, back to the present. So Josh and Brandon were talent scouting. They attended the show for your previous band, the more slammy, more kind of traditional thrash band. And afterwards you were approached and you're like, hey, what the fuck? But they're like, hey, join my band. And that happened. So like, I guess, how has the journey been for you so far up to this point, just playing in this band, making an EP? I haven't checked out the discography, and I think I'm about to. But you guys, I'm sure you have like a couple EPs out, and of course with this weekend now a full length. How's the journey been so far, just like getting up to this point?
Yeah, man, it's been sick. It's been a really good ride so far. There's only so much more to come. Starting out, and like I said, it does still sort of feel like this scene of just sort of jamming with your mates, just literally pissing around, but it's different now. Like it is getting a bit more serious. We do have people that actively listen to us, and
right,
we kind of have that responsibility, and we got to be able to provide for those sorts of people. So
right.
That's something getting used to, but the mindset sort of sometimes just slips back into that. You are just having fun with your mates, and ultimately I think it is important to try and keep that alive, because sometimes it can just get like a bit, there's nothing wrong with it, but it can get like a bit businessy sometimes with some sort of bands, and
too stiff, too serious.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, the journey's been super fun for me, especially not being an original member. I feel like I joined at a really good time where we could try and really starting to like mold the sound into what we are today. The first EP we ever released was like tons different to what it is today, and there's loads of factors and variables that deciding that, like different members at the time and all that sort of stuff, different influences at the time. Like I said, when I came in, I was way more into like death metal and slam and stuff, and now we're all sort of developed a bit more into different genres. It's just an ever-changing thing, really, but no, I've really enjoyed the process the whole way.
Sick. That's awesome to hear. And I think that will be a great way. Well, you know what? Actually, I need to still pluck 5 records from you.
Yeah, man.
And this can be guilty pleasure artists. This can be metal artists that helped you forge your sound as a drummer, getting into it. Or, I mean, hell, I didn't have this beforehand, but you can even mention a couple drummers that made you just really want to get crazy into drums, whether you're brothers or drummers in the scene.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm pretty like brain dead when it comes to like names. I'm like, yeah, just my brain's like a sieve, man. But I can definitely do bands. I can definitely do that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
One of the like most integral bands that I completely like, again, it's unlocking memories of my brain that I haven't really touched in years. But one of the most integral bands for me was Ingested at the time.
Fuck
Like
yeah.
with their first EP, it's just nuts. It's insane, surpassing the boundaries. It's just like that first like opening track, Skinned and Fucked, where it just comes in with that insane gravity, and it's got these stupid fast blast beats. And for me, being a drummer, I love blast beats and shit. There's definitely a part of me that like I find it hard to listen to stuff that's not like super, you know, doesn't have that super technical shit on the drums. Like, you know, I love that shit. I eat that shit, which takes me to my next band, Infinite Annihilator. You can even like, I mean, yeah, they're a band. They might not do live shit, but yeah, man, they fucking, when Aaron Kitcher like used to release those like playthroughs and stuff, and the whole thing was like, obviously MIDI drums is a huge thing, and everyone's like, yeah, he can't fucking play it, but like he did that like video, yeah, man, Decapitation Fornication was just insane. I watched that like a million times. Like just because like with MIDI drums and like all this sort of modern day shit, there's this sort of standard that like you write, and we even kind of do it a bit where you sort of write stuff on how you want it to sound. But then the whole controversy comes with like, well, can the drummer actually play it? So seeing someone like Aaron Kitcher actually being able to perform it kind of gave me a little bit of hope on like, fuck, you can actually do that. All you got to do is just, you know, practice, you know. But yeah, so Ingested, Infinite Annihilator, Cannibal Corpse was a huge one for me. I fucking love Cannibal Corpse, man. They're one of the like biggest inspirations for me, and you'll probably hear it in a lot of our shit, even though it's not like super death metal or anything. Like all this like bomb blasts and shit, the aggressiveness, like man, I love that shit. Who else? Oh no, those
you only got one more.
Satanist. My mind now. Huh?
Satanist.
Oh, dude, that is a perfect album there, start to finish. You can't deny. I would go down a few guilty pleasures there. Nothing to do with like inspiring the fucking like how I play or anything. But you know, just like anyone, you know, you've got all this aggression like all the time. You need to unwind sometimes. You need to unwind. You do. I love like a lot of like lo-fi hip hop and like rap and shit. Yeah, like you know, like there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to just have that balance, man. Like fucking, because like a lot of the like older stuff I used to listen to, like Queens of Stone Age and stuff like that, and Crooked Vultures, like, you know, they're not like particularly heavy, but it's good to have that balance. You know, I do like a lot of like hip hop and shit like that as well. But yeah, man, not so much like influences musically, but you know, shit to fuck with for sure.
Exactly. And I definitely, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but Kill Bill and Rav.
Dude, I fucking love those guys.
Yeah, man. That's sick.
That's so good.
So good. And like, that's definitely like previous episode. I think it was episode 20 now, which is crazy because I was hella earlier this year. I interviewed, I don't know if you guys know them, Party Cannon from Scotland. Yeah. So like, basically Chris, the guitarist, I think Chris or Mike. No, Chris is bassist, Mike is guitarist. Jesus. Also of Guitar Souls, which is another podcast. Shout out to them because it's actually pretty fucking funny to listen to intelligent people talk shit on certain things. But basically Mike was talking about like loving, I think, what was it? He was just like mentioning all these like really popular records, and just in general, that was the first time that the idea of guilty pleasures, musically speaking, was brought to the podcast attention. I'm like, oh shit. I mean, well, basically for me, it's Party Cannon, because, and I didn't say it at the time, but in reality, it's like, I'm all about lyrical depth. So when it comes to guilty pleasure music, that's usually music that does not have any lyrical depth at all. For example, Rob Zombie, which is literally music about zombies fucking Frankenstein or whatever, and just goes on forever. But Party Cannon is definitely another one of those like guilty pleasure bands for me, and I realized that over time. So I mean, that's sick that you're, you know, I mean, it makes so much sense because you're a drummer. You like to stay on beat, but sometimes you're like, all right, let's slow down a little bit, just like doom, doom,
Yeah,
you know,
man.
I'm
I'm gonna be dying of premature death if I fucking go through my life 300 ppm. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, yeah. Like either that or your heart just wouldn't be able to catch up to you. But either way, same statement. So with that being said, I think the final thing I want to ask you guys concerning, you know, just people, kind of people nature, I guess that's a terrible way to say it. But for those in the United States, for those around the world who just simply are not familiar with how things are in the UK, I wanted to get a little fine-tuned perspective from at least 3 lads from the UK, and basically just name one thing you love about the UK and one thing you fucking hate, because like it's all about perspective, people.
I really like the food in the UK, to be fair. We got a lot of food from other countries here. Like halloumi cheese, I'm gonna say that.
That's not even.
Have you ever eaten it?
It's like Greek.
Never
isn't it?
eaten it.
I know it's not like
Greek
British,
food.
but like it's massive in British culture for food.
Okay.
So I think British food is good. That's about it. Really. That's like probably the only thing I actually like about England. But
That's a fair one.
I like
to
it
be
because
honest.
you know it's like it's fairly safe. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
like
We are pretty.
we can go to good shows. Like we can reach decent. Like in the location we're in, if there's a band that we like, sort of like death metal, deathcore band, like we can always get there easy. Like we're not far from London, really. Like
Right.
and like all bands stop by London. You know what I mean? If they play in the UK, so that's cool.
Right. And then other
But yeah,
than
that's
that, it's
about
kind of
it,
just like
really.
because I know that you guys have a lot less gun related issues than we do.
Yeah.
So I mean that's I'm sure that's always nice, and that probably helps kind of secure and reinforce the safe nature of
Now
the
we
UK.
got knife issues instead.
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man, where there's a will, there's
Luckily
a way.
not here, but wow.
People
we do
find
have a
some
few
avenue
problems.
to release their aggression if they don't have guns, man.
It's
yeah. And like I've always thought, like speaking on that, and this is kind of like my loose statement is if you kind of take away firearms from the people legally, they'll acquire them illegally if they have like intentions of criminal act. Like is that pretty agreeable?
Yeah.
It's-
I mean, I think the problem is you take. I mean, I don't agree with guns generally, but like you
Mm.
take guns away from Americans, and then the people that are criminals will still have guns, but the people that aren't criminals will relinquish their firearms because they're trying to be a law-abiding citizen.
Right.
Then you have people that can't protect themselves. Like I don't know. That's
Yeah.
just sort of what that just comes to mind. Like
Right. No, and that continues the statement. I absolutely agree with that. All right. So we have a pro and con from Brandon. Josh.
I don't even know. Like, I think the only thing that I love about UK is my family's there. Like, I can't, like, the 1% chance of having a decent summer is maybe, I don't know, because I'm a country boy for the UK. Like, I've been raised in like going out hunting and fishing and
Right.
in the countryside. So if I'm around my family on a nice hot summer day in the country, that's where I'm like,
That's where it's at.
peak peace. I don't believe in peace, but
Right. No,
well, I
peace
feel
is kind
best.
of yeah, exactly. Because
the
your
food-
peace could be someone else's hell. You know, it's all
Yeah.
about perspective.
The food is, I don't know, is there even any British food anymore? like
Nah.
roast dinner, I think that's about
roast
it.
dinner, mate. Fish and chips, mate.
Fish and chips. Mushy peas.
Kebab is kind of British and like curry,
Kebab.
like
That's what I got down there.
Mm.
But nah, I don't. I slate UK. I don't like it here, but it's where I'm from. It's my blood, so
Yeah, it's like
I've
you're
dealt-
here. You might as well try to
I'll try to
rock
enjoy
with it while you can. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. How about you, Bruno?
Yeah, man. It's kind of like same sort of deal, really. Like you got to remember, like the UK is such a dense place in comparison to like the rest of the world. It's so
Right.
small. And like probably why it's so hard to think about things like if there's any original food or anything like that. UK isn't like super original with a lot of this shit. A lot of the sort of culture here is kind of mix and mash from like all over the world pretty much.
Right.
But you know, it's a nice thing to experience. Like for sure, like you know, there's just so much going on as far as like different cultures and different people, sorts that you meet. Yeah, it's really nice to experience for sure. But again, it's kind of the same sort of deal as to what I don't like about it. It's small as fuck, man. Like I kind of just dream of like going out of it, you know, going to different countries. I'd love to go to Europe, man. Like if we can get to the point where we can do like European tours or like tour the States or anything like that, that's my
Right.
dream,
One
man.
show.
Yeah.
Just one show. Just
Fine.
one
Just
show,
one
please.
show.
I've made it then.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes
One
so
show
much
in
sense.
someone's basement or someone's garage in America. I'm a
I'll
famous
I'll
musician.
host you guys. Come to the US. I'll host you guys. Like I'll
Lovely.
try to get a
Pay for
house
the
in the
ticket.
future.
I'll be there
I'll get a
tomorrow.
massive farmhouse. There you go. There's your venue. Like that's so funny to think about because for at least me and my American friends, because like gotta be specific with that in the context of this conversation. Like when you think of the UK, you think yeah, it's pretty small. Yeah, it's pretty white. And then you obviously think of the accent, but like beyond that, just because we're not constantly involved with that and because it's so far away, at least to the southern states, that's never really a conversation that comes up of, like what do they eat there? And I guess I never realized before that that's kind of one thing that the US and the UK share culturally is that we don't really have any original food anymore. We just kind of mix and match. And we claim things to be American, like burgers and shit. Like that's a German thing, people. That didn't come from the US. Us like stuffing and just injecting with a syringe grease into it and cheese and tomatoes, lettuce, and a big old freaking sesame bun. That's the American part. But the hamburger itself, that's been around for a long time. And that's not, you know, original to America, I guess, for those of you who don't know. But no, that's really cool to pluck a little bit of perspective from people, from musicians, from the members of To Obey a Tyrant, just speaking on behalf of the culture and where they're from, the land that they're constantly on, all that fun stuff. So wrapping up the first half of the Anatomy podcast, people, we now have the band. I call it the band section. You can call it the music section if you want. So we are going to be asking the juicy questions about the band project itself, as if it's just one being, as if it's one person. And I think this section is really what people await as they listen to that first half. But I guess the first question I have, and this is easily a question for both Josh and Brandon, but the name for the project, To Obey a Tyrant, how was that cooked up?
I think it was in Brandon's mum's stairwell, leading up to his room.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I've always been a big fan of like lyrics and like poetry and stuff, so I guess I'm fairly all right with words. So I just stumbled on it. Like we were listening to like a lot of bands at the time, like you know The Art Is Murder and like
that
sort of bands
sense.
like that. So we wanted to sort of generate a name that was like that sort of time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we just came up with it. Like it's sort of like my sort of. I imagine like everyone sort of like obeys like someone higher. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're all sort of like living on this planet under the will of some like harsh dictator in a sense. And like that's sort of what the name means. Like you're born to obey a tyrant of some form or another.
Right.
And that could be like a king, it could be a king, or like I don't know, like a president, or like some dark side of like a government, or like a deity, maybe like even like a deity, like or some sort of alien overlord or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sort of just stems from that sort of thought process.
And therefore it's a statement instead of just like a name or just a word, which I notice a lot of bands these days, they usually cook up like a 2-word name or even just a 1-word name and they make it plural at the end. That way, when you think Architects, oh, that band, or Beartooth, you're like, whoa, interesting. It has a little bit of a kick to it, but not too much. And To Obey a Tyrant, simple as that. it's a statement, which I really like. To like, you know, to obey a tyrant. You can imagine a theater performance opening up and just, well, the imagery of gods, deities, kings, presidents, constitutional Congress, which, if I'm remembering correctly from high school, which is hella long ago, constitutional Congress, that is the term for like the assembly politically for the UK, right?
I don't even know, to be fair. I'm like the shittest UK person going.
Right.
Like, I don't even know our national anthem.
We don't
Like,
even know where we are.
No.
What country are we in?
Are we in Germany?
I've just been kidnapped.
We live under a rock, man.
Well, yeah, especially since 2020, I'm sure a lot of people do, and they kind of don't have a choice, and it's just becoming more comfortable now. So I completely understand that. But yeah, just like the imagery in a theater, and obviously as time has progressed with To Obey a Tyrant becoming more of a Blackened Deathcore outfit in the UK, which that's pretty niche. That's pretty specific. Just UK Blackened Deathcore band. Like, boom, there you go. That's pretty easy to remember as far as I'm concerned. But I love that. I love that it's a statement. I love that it's as simple as just poetry. And just, you know, when you think of that, you think of just the imagery of tyrants and deities and constitutional Congress, presidents, whatever you can imagine, man. Just someone oppressing, someone
is oppressing. Yeah, it is the oppressor.
Yeah. And tyrants, well, the end of tyrants, like the age of tyrants is long past. So, like, or at least we like to think so, and we would love for it to be that way. But behind the scenes, man, you got the Freemasons and all that other shit, and they really are the tyrants of the world now, which is crazy to think about them and the Rothschilds. But when it came to getting what is currently the member lineup, like Brandon, you were saying that there were a couple member changes along the way for To Obey a Tyrant. Yeah,
we had like different drummer at the start, a couple of guitarists. We actually had two vocalists, sort of. Like, this was just before To Obey a Tyrant, really. This was before To Obey a Tyrant, but this was when we were sort of like trying to really make a band. Like, we actually had two vocalists. So we've had basically two vocalists. We've had two other guitarists, two bassists, and one other drummer. Two other drummers, technically.
Oh, okay.
Marco was kind of like one of our old friends.
That's in the old band. What is basically To Obey a Tyrant.
Yeah. Right. Okay, cool.
And a lot of member changes.
Yeah, I'm sure, and especially over time, like different opportunities.
Like, I agree with Brandon, but he's not mentioned it. We don't classify our, like, To Obey a Tyrant was born properly when we released the EP Contra and Damnation.
Right.
That's everything before was just experimental, trying to find. So
exactly that,
Bruno said he's not an official, like an original member. He is. Mm-hmm. Like, we've been there before, but it doesn't start until Contra and Damnation.
Right. And more or less everything before you guys' your debut release was more like the child that is To Obey a Tyrant, it being conceived. And then when the EP came out, it was born, and the band really started walking around as a being, as a collective group.
What it was before was just pure shit.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Therefore in the womb.
Yeah. That's literally, it's like before. When did it come out? 2018? 2019?
2019, yeah.
Yeah.
So before that
we were literally a fetus.
9 months in the womb.
Yeah, we're just
when it came out, that's it, done.
Yeah, no, that's sick. And you know, now that To Obey a Tyrant has had the opportunity to walk around, grow up a little bit, even though it's only been now 3 years since your initial EP, how comfortable are you guys with what To Obey a Tyrant is? Are there still some little kinks in the machine to kind of like angle around, or are you guys like, okay, this is what To Obey a Tyrant is, and full force, unstoppable, don't fuck with us? Like,
me, nah, not anywhere near. Like, like I'm already writing the new stuff now.
Oh shit.
Like, Omni, as much as I love it, that I've been sat on them songs for like the last 2 years. So
that's fair.
I'm like, I love them. I still listen to them, but I'm bored. I want to write. So I've started writing. And like going forward, I just want more big, like behemoth again. Just big, like the end of Blow Your Trumpets and The Satanist, where it's just a big, just progression.
Yeah. No, it's more of like an epic theater performance instead of, well, Blackened Deathcore. Like, you know, it's you're aiming for something a little bit bigger than that, and that's completely natural. And I think really since 2019, with albums like Luciferus by Enterprise Earth, Sheol by Shrine of Malice, and Melancholy by Shadow of Intent, among many others, I think that's really when Blackened Deathcore like had its renaissance, and everybody was like, okay, I really want to do this too. And just everybody started tapping into it. I'm like, okay, hold on. Like, let's not saturate the sound here. Let's kind of like give your band something different than what the previous band was providing. And, you know, albums like A Hill to Die Upon by Mental Cruelty, I think that's a really good example of just mixing something else with Blackened Deathcore, which for them, it was like slam. Just the slam that they started out with, and then they mixed it with Blackened Deathcore, and it gave us one of the best Blackened Deathcore albums of all time, really. So up to this point, you guys are like, you know, you're still working out a few kinks in the machine that is To Be a Tyrant, and you know, after all, it's your first full-length album, so that makes complete sense. And I think that is a really, really good way to transition into the album that is releasing their debut as of this weekend, Omnimalevolent. So primarily, was it collectively a lyrical effort, or does Brandon handle the lyrics primarily?
He handles.
Josh made a few titles up.
You made 2 titles?
Yeah, Josh made a couple of titles up, like track titles. Josh sometimes like comes up with like a few lines and stuff like this. But mainly I do write all the lyrics myself usually. Okay, sweet. Yeah.
And my lines were like little skeletons. Brandon put some meat on them.
Yeah, the meat, the muscle, as long as you're in that process a little bit, like that's really all that matters. And that's really what helps distinguish To Obey a Tyrant from other projects I've interviewed before, which is really cool. So are you gentlemen okay with taking a little bit of time to dig under the skin of Omnimalevolent, meaning like track by track lyrical analysis?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I'm good listening to it. This is Brandon.
There you go. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what will be Under the Skin. And this is another session for episode 27 of the Anatomy Podcast, featuring Brandon Singleton, Josh Hushton, and Bruno Clay of To Obey a Tyrant. Their new album, Omnimalevolent, has just released this weekend alongside another record we did an Under the Skin session before. I said that wrong. And Spite's Dedication to Flesh. Huge weekend for metal. So right off the bat, basically, Brandon, go ahead and provide me a back of the book summary of this record. Like, what is the overlaying lyrical theme that is going on here?
Right. So basically, we wanted it to be as evil as possible. Really, it's going to be a major Blackened Deathcore album. You know, so I was thinking to myself, what's the opposite of God? And God is meant to be omnibenevolent, all loving. He's meant to be omniscient, like all seeing. So I was like, instead of omnibenevolent, it would be omnimalevolent, which is all evil, like it's complete evil.
Right.
And all of the songs on the album are you basically like about like demonic entities and just different scenarios really that are just evil. It's just all evilness.
Right.
So basically Omnimalevolent, the song itself, is about basically some sort of demon convincing people to become evil like he is, and basically him convincing mankind to become evil. I am very infatuated with like eclipses and like dead suns. And like in the lyrics, it's like basically stare into the sky and like look at the eclipse, and it will make you omnimalevolent, like all evil. And it's like about the world descending into darkness and humanity wanting to dwell within this darkness with this evil demonic entity.
Right.
So that's that song, pretty
Okay,
much.
cool. Yeah.
We've got Notary per Malum, which is Latin.
Oh, which track is that?
Notary per Malum.
Ah, there we go.
It's in Latin. So
yes,
obviously when people get possessed by demons, like they tend to speak Latin or Aramaic. So we've got a few Latin like titles floating around. That basically means marked by evil.
Okay.
And it is about the attempt, a priest attempting to exorcise a demon from a person that is sick and becoming possessed. And that is basically, that song is completely painting a picture of that from start to finish, of that process of possession, and the priest fails to exorcise the demons, and then the priest dies, you know, like it's just very like horror themed, very horror themed, man.
It's a tragedy. It could be condensed into an A24 film or something of a similar nature.
I write like I story tell with my lyrics, so I sort of like write a story. Like that's just the way I write. So yeah, each song is basically like a story of the title.
Which that works.
Vermilion Moon, for instance. Vermilion Moon is about a witch that lives in the woods, and yeah, like I said, I'm obsessed with eclipses and suns and moons and stuff like that. So it's like blood moon, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that song's about basically a female witch that is like a daughter of putridity, is what we call her. And it's just about like a witch being like, you know, doing witch things. Yeah.
No, that's great. Okay, so like immediately you seem to have covered 3 tracks on this record, which is sick, and like you're just a boom boom boom, there we go. So
yeah,
I would definitely let's go ahead and talk about track 1, you know, because these are the songs that people haven't heard yet, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Track 1, I need to remember what tracks are what, man.
Right. Track 1 is Sermon of Serpents.
Sermon of Serpents, yeah, rad. Yeah, so basically, everyone, if you know what a sermon is, obviously where a priest gives a speech in the church. So it's about basically the priest is convincing all the people that attending the sermon, convincing them like that he's a nice guy and all this, but really he's actually it's like a demon in disguise. And he's teaching, sorry, not teaching, he's basically leading them astray to become evil, to become like, yeah, like a cult, some sort of a cultist, I guess.
Yeah, which that's just like freaking priest and cult goes hand in hand these days, because people are just learning more and more shit. So that makes absolute sense. How about track 2, Sanctus Infernum, featuring our boy from the Stygian complex, Kyler Cheek? Like, what the fuck is up?
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's Latin as well. Josh made that name up. That's one of Josh's titles.
Sick.
That means holy hell.
Okay, cool.
It's complete opposites, but it fits as well.
Yeah, that's badass. And
I got major inspiration from that one, from Dante's Inferno.
Sweet.
Like, the lyrics are basically me talking about all of the circles of hell and the atrocities that happen in hell to the people that are within these circles. And Kyla's section is the last circle, which is really brutal. Like in the very last circle, betrayal, Lucifer is in the circle and he's like weeping because he's actually upset that he's in hell. Like, believe it or not, if you read Dante's Inferno, you'll know he's crying and he's chewing on traitors and like other traitors that have died from Earth and like gone to hell. Sorry, he chews on them for eternity, and he like cries, and it says his tears mix with blood and froth from people that he's chewing, and then the froth and blood freezes on his face over and over again, because in Dante's Inferno they say that hell is actually freezing cold in parts.
Whoa.
And the traitors of humanity are submerged in ice, and depending on how much of a traitor they are, the ice becomes thicker and more like, I don't know, more painful, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that song's all about Dante's Inferno, pretty much.
Sick. Yeah, that's awesome. How about track 3, Goetia?
Goetia is Josh's other title.
Sick.
That one's basically about summoning evil spirits, because the name Goetia basically means to summon evil spirits and stuff like this, like
Right.
summoning demons or like angry spirits. So yeah, it's about a person that is like, I guess, some sort of like black mage that is summoning spirits to destroy the world.
Shit. Yeah. And
So yeah,
We're all Christian.
I called the spirit that it summoned. Pardon?
We're all Christian in this band.
Oh yeah.
We're not devil
anti-Christian.
That is a joke.
Right.
I mean, yeah, the lyrics are dark as fuck. Like, I write really fucking dark lyrics, but like, I am a chill dude. Like, I'm not like, I'm not like gonna sacrifice you or anything.
yo,
Like, I might do.
that
like,
comes that comes with the starter kit. People just understand that this has been since the beginning, episode 1. Like, we've had the filthiest, nastiest, just most Satanist, just fucking and all that bands. That being Nithful, Warm Shepherd. Like, we've had them all on, and here we go, another band to say, hey. We don't sacrifice anything. It's okay. You don't have to be afraid. You're safe, because you are. In the face of God's enemies, you're safe. Like, honestly, and we are God's enemies, I would say. So Goetia, we have what seems to be a mass conjuring, which is pretty sick. And I have to like be curious and ask the question, like, are these all individual stories that begin with the song's beginning and end with the song's end? Or do these all have just like, oh, we have like a whole narrative going on here consisting of a whole bunch of terrible acts because of the omnimalevolent being that is incorporated and involved with this story?
it's the songs aren't necessarily like really linked themselves to each other, but it's just like they're all just sort of anti-God, like sort of like they're very blasphemic, like sort of like blasphemy, like it's all just like dark demonic witchcraft, like they're the main sort of things. So yeah, they're not linked, but it's just like it's a suitable title because they're just all stories of things that are omnimalevolent. Like every song you would describe as omnimalevolent in a sense.
Exactly, a collection of omnimalevolent events separate from each other, and just all just kind of resonating with that depth of evil. But that's pretty cool.
Sort of going back to the EP, the whole EP is one collective story from start to finish.
There you go.
It starts with sacrificial slaughter, where it's like you get in your sacrifice, and right at the end is planetary eradication. The planet's fucked. It's gone.
Yeah, so that's how you end a story.
Didn't want to do that again.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So how about track 4, Death Incantation?
We had another song called Blood Ritual, and that was meant to be on the album, but we decided we didn't want it anymore. We just didn't like it. Like, we didn't enjoy playing it. Like, I don't know, it's just something about it. So we replaced it with this song, which is Death Incantation.
I think it's the first song we wrote for the album. So as time went on, thanks to COVID, we was writing better songs. So when we put it all together, it just sounded so weak and just shit. I can't
We
stand it.
prefer than stuff we are writing, like the new stuff.
Right. Naturally. And I mean, as long as you guys have that time to kind of make that decision, because imagine having that other song in the album and you're like, just during your live sets, you're like, I'm kind of done fucking playing this. You know, I'm sure it's a situation, even if you love the album at first, I'm sure it gets tiring to play all these tracks live when you have the opportunity. And you're just like, yeah, let's just make some new shit though. Like, time to move on, man.
I can't remember half the songs. I got I probably the last time I played half of the album was about a year and a half ago. So I don't.
When you were first cooking it up.
Yeah. Death Incantation
funny.
was meant to be for the next thing, whatever we release.
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, yeah, that's pretty sick. And Death Incantation being the predecessor per se, the better version of another song. Like, is it just like absolute bloodbath? Just, you know, Death Incantation. I think of like a summoning spell for necromancy or something.
It's about a person that's infatuated with like the occult and wants to actually become a demon themselves. So they are inciting these like death incantations upon people. Like the first thing I say in that song is invoker of malediction. So like he wants to invoke malediction upon like as many people as he can in hope that like he'll get noticed by like a demon in hell, and they'll like basically anoint him like with the status of being a demon in a sense.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Pretty evil shit right there.
Yeah, that's basically about that.
Yeah, there you go. Track 5, we have Of Fire and Sulfur, which love the title. Gotta love the title, man. And also the feature being Dan Tucker. I have a pretty good opportunity later this year. And I'm super pumped for that. But what do we got going on here, Brandon?
Oh, I need a button. I need a button. Bruno and Brandon knows what I'm going to say. The track was meant to be another one I actually made up years ago. It was meant to be Of Fire and Brimstone, like just the straight up Bible verse or whatever. But then, literally like a month or a few weeks before we was meant to release the music video, another band sent out put out a song called Of Brimstone and Fire,
and that would be Disembodied Tyrant.
yeah.
Which our homies of ours.
Just like we had it all recorded. For like a year or so. The lyrics writ everything.
I literally had to retract the lyrics and change Brimstone to Sulfur.
Like we tried so hard to try convince ourselves that like, oh nah, people won't fucking notice. But it got to the point where we was like, we can't. I'm not fucking gonna be sitting having to reply to comments on YouTube asking why we've ripped off this band.
Yeah, and
I had to do it anyway.
Yeah,
right.
The one, so
yeah, I mean, there you go. And that's funny that I kind of made that connection. I'm like, this kind of the song title reminds me of something else. I'm like, oh wait, like
people still made the connection. There were still like comments on it, like because it was so soon after their release, and then people were like commenting like, hey, didn't those guys release the other track? And I was like,
if they didn't have Tyrant in their name, I wouldn't give a shit. But
what are the chances?
The fact they've got Tyrant in their name.
That's true. I didn't even realize that. And how do I not realize that? That's funny.
But
there's too many connections there. We had to change it.
Yeah,
they beat us to it. Fair play to them. It's a killer song.
You beat us, guys.
Beat us. The song I'm salty.
Meanwhile, To the Grave has a song called Recoil and Horror, and then Recoil and Horror has a song called To the Grave, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then they just moved on. Like, that's funny. But lyrically speaking, and just inquiring on the decision to bring Dan Tucker onto the song, because obviously he's a legendary vocalist, but like, what was the creative process behind this track?
It's the song's about dying and going to hell, like thinking you were like a normal person, like you're a good person, but in fact, like in this world we live in today, it is pretty much impossible to live your life without sinning. So it's about someone that thought they were like living a good life, like they were like maybe a little bit religious, like blah blah blah, but in fact they have died and gone to hell, and you know, it's about what's happening to that person now in hell,
Sweet.
basically.
And what was the discussion, or like what was the decision to bring Dan Tucker onto the song? Like
I've
how
been
did
listening to Crown Megtar like a lot. Their EP Prophet of Disgust is a sick EP, man. I'm really into that. I think Josh started getting into them as well, and we just thought, you know, it'd be a good idea.
I think I just
I can't remember why we made the decision.
we was like looking, because originally we was meant to have Alex from Black Tongue on on the actual title track,
right?
But it just got delayed and delayed. It was just like, fuck it, it's too embarrassing to go and ask now,
right?
So we was looking at more different vocalists, more like impossible ones that we would have just loved and even like reached out to, but it's just more for the fact of like Brandon's the guy who defined his sort of vocal, like Dan Watson, from Infant obviously and Enterprise Earth,
and now Mylor. Like he's been jumping around, man.
But and then we was like, oh shit, Crown's just put out some sick stuff. He just sounds flawless,
right?
So we just hit him up and he actually got back, and he's just a super sick dude.
Yeah, he seems like a really nice guy. Absolutely.
He was super enthusiastic about it as well. Like it's always nice when you can reach out to these bigger people and they're like super like enthusiastic and they dig the music. Like it makes the feature feel like more like part of the song for sure.
Right, exactly. And it makes it a lot more personal when it's not just about, oh, you're paying me like $500,000. What do you need me to do? Like, it's like, no, this actually is pretty sick music and I love being a part of it. That's always nice.
It's like when I got in touch with him, I just gave him the song and was like, just pick whatever section you want, that you like or what you feel the best.
Right.
And then you can have it.
Sick.
And then he ended up just choosing the end breakdown anyway. So
there you go. That's funny. Well, I mean, shout out to Dan Tucker of both And Hell Followed With and Crown Magnetar, which are both really, really sick bands. And Hell Followed With releasing their first album after a long time, Quietus, branching off from, I think, the narrative and just imagery aesthetic, I guess, of the previous full length. So definitely big shout out to them, and cannot wait to hear this song for the first time, as well as the rest of the album. And as we get closer and closer to the end and just, wrapping up this entire record, which we still got quite a bit of ways to go, we have the title track. And I can only imagine that this title track, as you said before, Brandon, is just kind of meant to describe how the whole album is a collective of omni-malevolent events. So with that in mind, is there any other commentary that you would want to provide concerning the lyrical process of the title track?
Well, like you said, it's basically summing up all of the events, and that's basically how I wrote it. It's just summing up all the events, really.
Sweet. Yeah.
And describing the name.
Yeah, exactly. Because everybody loves to hear the title track. I mean, I know I do. So immediately moving on to track number 7, He Who Shuns the Light. What do we got going on here?
There's a demon, and like it was a demon inspired me to write this. I was reading about reading demonology basically, and one of the nicknames, one of the demons that fell from heaven was He Who Shuns the Light. That was like a nickname that he was given. So I basically just was like, that sounds really fucking cool. I'm gonna write a song about that, and it's basically about a demon getting kicked out of heaven and falling to hell, and about what he feels and what he thinks.
Fun. Yeah, there you go. And what is the official name of this demon that you ended up?
You know what? I really hate to say it, but I forgot.
Well, in that case,
there's so many.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's see. He who I'll go ahead and pull it up real quick. He who shuns the light.
Watch it just come up as Brandon Singleton.
Yeah,
Made it up
It's
and
me, like,
green.
that'd be funny.
Yeah.
Let's see. What do we got here? Mephistopheles. Which that's a
Yeah.
freaking
go.
tongue twister is what that is.
Sounds like
Yeah, I
your
couldn't remember
friend's
that, man.
little
I was
crazy
like,
home.
No, that's
I didn't want to say it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And being that we've covered now the lyrical contents of both track 8 and 9 being Notari per Malum and Vermilion Moon, we'll go ahead and skip over right to Immolation. What is going on here, Brandon?
If you obviously, for people that don't know what that means, it means to offer something through fire, or to kill yourself through fire, or to kill someone else through acts of burning, basically. So that one is about witch trials and a witch being accused. Well, basically, at the start of the song paints a portrait of a world that's very bleak, very gloomy. The church are very powerful in this like land, and they sort of just like mindlessly kill people for like being into science or being into alchemy or medicines. And the song's about like people being labeled witches and burnt or hung, because a lot of witches were also hung.
Yeah.
And basically they come across one person after like slaughtering many innocent people, but this one person they come across at the end is actually a full witch and an evil witch, and then she basically kills them all.
Damn. Okay. Yeah,
It's like in that film, was it Carrie? That film Carrie, where she just goes nuts at the end.
Yeah, on the stage.
Basically, that happens, but a bit
Oh,
more
shit.
brutal.
Oh yeah, there you go. Fucking definitely another tragedy to add to the list of the
They picked on the wrong chick though, basically.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. And
Basically, moral story: don't bully.
don't bully. Exactly. Be nice.
Don't be a bully.
Unless you want to bathe in blood, I guess. Track number 11, we have Perpetual Abhorrence. What do we got going on here?
That one is about. My mind's just gone completely blank.
I think I made that name. That one.
You made that name as well.
Me.
Yeah.
It's just, like the name itself is just like, pure horror. Like everlasting.
This one's
horror.
actually got a major story that I forgot about. Like, yeah, sorry. So this song is about someone who makes a deal with the devil for power and success.
Okay.
And they were like nothing at the start. Like nothing. They were like an ambitious. I like to think it would be set sort of in like medieval times, so like an ambitious sort of like wannabe king in a sense.
Right.
And then they made a deal with the devil for success, and then I talk about how he fucked over his family and like basically killed innocent people for money, and like, you know, got fat eating loads of food, like gorging away at food, but other people were like dying of starvation because it's in that sort of medieval environment like years and years ago. And then at the end, the devil, if you make a deal with the devil, there's always like something bad that's going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's two sides, and he had to pay the price for the deal that he got.
Naturally. Yeah.
And it's about that.
Yeah, atone for your sins and shit. That makes absolute sense. And like, I think greed and gluttony are kind of the most common sins, among the 7 deadly sins for humanity overall. Like, it's kind of embarrassing sometimes, but that's a pretty sick way to go about that lyrically. I like that.
Yeah, like one of the lyrics are like, when something is given, something must always be taken in return.
Right.
It's basically like his soul. At the end, his soul is gone.
Yeah, that makes sense. So wrapping up basically what will be the under the skin session for Omnimalevolent, in which I'm about to pick up some swag, honestly. Because this is a really cool album, really awesome opportunity. We have track number 12, which is Forlorn and the Hollow. What's going on here, Brandon?
Well, forlorn means hopeless, basically. If you didn't know that, like you probably know that, but not everyone will probably know that.
Yeah,
it's basically how as mankind, we are hopeless, and we like, we destroy each other. We're selfish, arrogant. Like, we don't care for one another. We only care about ourselves. It's about how we are hopeless existence, and the lyrics are a worthless, hopeless, sepulchral existence. That's what the lyrics come in with at first, and it says that like 3 times, and it's about basically how we could be so much more, but we're not. We're actually just, shit things. We're shit beings.
Yeah. Which, yeah, collectively, some would agree. And it's kind of the plot line of so many films that involve aliens or demons, just like humans are filth. They do not deserve to live. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, I kind of agree with that, though. And I think that's kind of the point of it, is just to kind of like associate people with that mindset of, well, right now, we're kind of collective shit. Like, there are plenty of people trying to do good, but compared to the people that don't care, or compared to the very few who have the resources to care per se, but they don't want to, it just sucks.
Yeah.
It's kind of an embarrassment to the rest of us. And we're like, hey, we can't really do anything because we're poor, or because we're sick, we're dying. And, there's disease, and there's a worldwide virus or worldwide disease that's like just affecting absolutely everybody now. And we have to take precautions and blah, blah, blah. We have to make sacrifices. And like, I still remember, even just speaking for COVID at the beginning of it, when like we were making such big progress as far as like plastic reduction in the ocean and people cleaning up beaches. And the moment that COVID hit, like, holy shit, here in the States and around the world, you just saw the N95 masks everywhere on the beaches. And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? We just made progress. And now just like, oh, okay, COVID, oh, gotta stay safe. But when I'm done with it, just on the beach, I'm like, what the fuck, dude? We just retracted. We just like took 3 steps back when we took quite a few forward. But, over time, I think people have gotten better with that. And that's really what counts. But I think that's a great way to wrap up the Under the Skin session of our Anatomy podcast session. Currently, I'm sure it's hella late for you guys. So therefore, we are also going to be wrapping up episode 27 of the Anatomy podcast with Brandon Singleton, Josh Hushton, and Bruno of To Obey a Tyrant. Their debut full-length record has come out this weekend, so it's out, people. Go check it out. And I'm actually going to be taking some time here, going to be buying some shit, and that'll be fun. Getting one of the flags and the CDs, and I didn't realize that you guys were getting your shit printed through Reality Fade, but that's really cool to see. But be sure to stream their new album, and it was great to have you guys on, especially considering the circumstances and, well, how long you guys took out of your day to wait for me to get on. So I do appreciate your patience. And
So good, man.
Is there anything else you guys would want to say before we wrap up the session?
Have a blast.
There
Don't
you go.
be a dickhead.
Watch
Yeah,
the
man.
album. Please
Don't
listen to the album.
Absolutely.
Please,
Enjoy
Please.
it.
really need this.
Polish stuff so he could pay for the management.
There
And
you go.
obviously, thank you so much for having us, man. Like,
Yeah.
cheers.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Cheers.
It's been great.
It's been an absolute honor to have you guys on. I make it sound like we're about to descend into battle. It's like it's been an honor serving with you all. But to say the least, that will be episode 27 of the Anatomy podcast. And now the future is pretty uncertain as far as the next band who I will be having on the podcast, but we will be getting this episode up as soon as possible. Thank you, boys, for joining us. And to the rest of you, be sure to enjoy your afternoon, your evening, wherever the fuck you are. Like, have a good one.